If you take a look on my channel, I made a video about a year ago going over Left 4 Dead 2 and the mechanics it offers. I titled that video Left 4 Dead 2 in a nutshell. But today I want to take a deeper look at the reason why Left 4 Dead refuses to die. Left Behind and even DDoS, Left 4 Dead 2 remains one of the best zombie games of all time. Dare I say the best zombie game of all time? It definitely is in my opinion. But if you haven't noticed already, I'll be using my webcam in this video, and if you haven't noticed, then anyways, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Please enjoy the video. Let's begin. To give you an idea of my relationship with this game and why I believe it will never die, we must jump back in time to when I first got my hands on a copy of Left 4 Dead. Not the second game, but the first one. The old green cover. Nostalgic. You see, the first Left 4 Dead came out in 2008, which was quickly followed up exactly a year later with a sequel. The game we all know and love, Left 4 Dead 2.
Ridiculous. A year later.
But if you've been a long-time viewer of my channel, you know I'm only 17, which puts my birth year about 2006. And if you haven't pieced it together already, I've been playing this game for 16 long years. But rewinding back to when the game first came out, my dad sat me down and he said, "Son, today you're gonna be doing me." And subsequently after this harassment, he put in the Left 4 Dead disc straight into the Xbox 360. You see, if you actually do the math, I'm only about 2 years old when the game came out. So honestly, I didn't really know what I was doing. My dad would just let me kind of f around with the controller. I kind of just played around without finishing any of the campaigns. Then a year later, Left 4 Dead 2 comes out, right? But my dad never picked up a copy. I don't remember why specifically, but he probably just moved on to a different game and didn't really give it a second thought. But for years, I only played the first one. There's a funny story that until recently my family just reminded me about. Apparently when I was in preschool or kindergarten, I got into an altercation with another kid and the school ended up calling my parents. And when they asked where I learned this from, I said, "Bill told me to kill your dad." When they asked what happened, supposedly I said I was gonna kill some kid's dad, and when they asked me where I learned this from, I said Left 4 Dead. To be honest, if you knew the kind of kid that I was, I would have never said something so offhandedly. So that kid must have really pissed me off. The original Left 4 Dead launched with No Mercy, Dead Air, Blood Harvest, and Death Toll. So for years I only got to experience those maps. But nonetheless, I played and played and never got bored. Because I was so young, my dad didn't let me play online in any of our games. So all I did was turn the difficulty to easy and play. You could argue that I was a kid, and kids are hilariously easy to entertain, and I'd agree to a certain extent, but if that was the case and it was just because I was a kid and it was easy to entertain me, I wouldn't have hundreds of hours on Steam, and I still currently play to this day. Fast forwarding to when the Xbox One came out in 2013, my dad finally downloaded a trial version of Left 4 Dead 2, which if I remember correctly, I believe it only had the first or 2 levels of the Parish campaign. But when I got my hands on some new content, I didn't really enjoy it. Not that Left 4 Dead 2 is bad by any means, it isn't, it's a really good game. But I had played the first game for so long and I had gotten used to the way that the game felt and all the earlier types of weapons and zombies. So playing with a new one just felt kind of weird. Fast forward a couple more years to 2019 and I finally got my hands on a laptop. And by this time I'd started to enjoy the typical games that kids do online. Games like Minecraft and Roblox. But my laptop at the time wasn't the best and it definitely wasn't a gaming one. I was in the Steam store one day and I stumbled across Left 4 Dead 2. I decided to ask my mom if I could buy a copy. She eventually said yes and I figured it'd been some time since I played the game. I'd probably like it a lot better than when I first tried it, and oh boy did I enjoy it. You see, because Left 4 Dead 2 was a decently old game even at the time, it ran really well on my shitty laptop, so I was able to decently enjoy it. And to this day, that's the copy of the game I've poured hundreds of hours into. And I'm even one of the few people in the world to get 100% of the achievements, which is notoriously hard. What allows me and thousands of other people to continue playing Left 4 Dead 2 years after its release? Answer: replayability. If you were dropping into the same maps with the same items and the same location with the same weapons, you'd get bored out of your mind easily within the first couple of hours. But the Left 4 Dead 2 devs were smart. Weapons, heals, grenades, and more were all randomized. This encourages the player to explore off of the main path. In one game you might find an ammo pile with some weapons, and in another you might find nothing. But maybe there's a room full of heals next to it. Who knows, right? That's the fun of it. You gotta explore, experience each map for what they are, and that's how you get the loot. This aspect of replayability is most prevalent in the game's mode campaign. There's also randomness added into the maps in the form of different routes. Where you can see this the most in is in the campaign dead center, where the doors down a certain hallway can be blocked, forcing you to take the other route down the stairs. Another example would be the escalators, but to a smaller extent. But even after playing this map hundreds of times, you don't really notice the escalators after a while, but they can move positions very slightly. Alongside randomly spawning items and map changes, the most important factor is the game's director. The term director refers to how the game chooses the flow of each round. I touched on this in my previous video, but it can change loot spawns, giving players more medkits and healing items if they've been taking too much damage. Hordes of zombies that spawn are sometimes tests to gauge where the players are. If the game detects that they are struggling with the current local difficulty, the game's AI might relax and not send as many zombies your way. But if you plow your way through everything the game sends at you, the local difficulty will ramp up. I've been saying local difficulty a lot. What is that? When you start the game, you can choose between easy, normal, advanced, and expert. Those difficulties are the standard ones and affect how the local difficulty is handled. The local difficulty is more specifically the game's AI/director trying to match the players. The standard difficulty puts a difficulty floor and a difficulty ceiling where the game's AI can move in between. That's why you can get really easy expert games, but you can also get super hard expert games. Another game mode that adds to the longevity of Left 4 Dead 2 is its versus mode. Some people play a mix of campaign and versus, some people only play campaign and others only play versus. But versus is the competitive mode of Left 4 Dead. It allows a team of 4 survivors to face off against 4 special infected, also players. And good god, I would pay so much money to get an esports event based off of this mode. Being able to play as the special infected is not only a different way to experience the game, but it adds the replayability of the campaign into the versus mode. Of course, in addition to the features I mentioned earlier, which include randomly spawning loot and items, which can change the tide of versus games drastically. Unfortunately, people in this mode are very competitive and they love to shout slurs, so watch out for that. But you'll also run into people that are really nice from time to time, so give them a chance as well. The last major update was in 2020. What you say? The update named The Last Stand introduced a new map alongside some weapons added from the original Counter-Strike. Interestingly enough, the weapons in the update were originally from the German copies of the game, but then were released for everyone after the update. Unfortunately, it's been 4 years since any sort of content update has came out, but I'm holding out hope. Biggest downside is that the developer is Valve, so I might be huffing hopium right now, honestly. Recently, however, the game's official servers have been under DDoS attacks, which is heartbreaking. Who would want to ruin one of the best co-op experiences of the time? I don't understand people. But if you find everyone in the server has extremely high ping, just go back to the lobby and change it to a local server. It should allow you to play no problem. I had mentioned this earlier in the video, but I'm one of the very few that took the time to 100% the game. Meaning the achievements, of course. That experience was hell. If you're a longtime fan of the game and have put hundreds of hours into the game like me, you might want to consider the grind, but don't be fooled. The game has so many issues with achievements not working, tracking being bugged, and outright impossible achievements. But I wanted to bring this up because for years I've never cared about achievements. The game was just fun and I never took them into account before. If you want the bragging rights, then I suggest you do it, because looking at the 100% badge is pretty nice. Usually games nowadays will launch with a battle pass, unlocks, challenges, long-winded progression, but Left 4 Dead 4 never needed that. That's the reason why I have no problem purchasing DLC if they were to ever come out. It's because the game itself is the fun part. Just like Baldur's Gate, it's the game that's fun, not the grind you put in after spending $20 on a battle pass. It's not trying to sell you some service pumped full of microtransactions and shit you don't care about. The game is pure fun, and that's all that's needed. Does that mean I wouldn't want hats or an overall player level? No. If Left 4 Dead 3 were to ever come out, I would love to see an inventory system similar to TF2 and a player level that goes along with your hours played, just to be able to show off the dedication to the franchise. But I would spend so much money on that game, but it really doesn't need it, to be honest. It can just be a fun experience. Chances are people watching this video have been playing the game for years, already knowing everything I talked about, but for the very slim chance that there's a new player watching or somebody who's teetering on the edge of buying the game or not, I encourage you do. It's one of the best games, if not the best game I've ever experienced. And if Valve ever learns to count to 3, maybe, just maybe we'll get a Left 4 Dead 3, but that's almost as much of a loss as Half-Life 3 is. So I mean, they made a Half-Life Alyx, so it's possible we could get a Left 4 Dead Bill or something. I think that'd be pretty cool, but I'm crossing my fingers over here. But if you made it this far into the video, consider subscribing, maybe even a like. Both of those things can really help out my channel. I'm Cookie Blitz, you can call me Lyndon. Enjoy the rest of your day.